Chapter 71 The Real Ninja World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The few decent medical ninjas are tied up in surgery, and the rest are just patching up basic injuries. And don't even get me started on the useless helpers. Before he even got to Umino Iruka, Miyoshi Kazuhiko was already grumbling, his tone dripping with annoyance. "Hey, what can you do?" Umino Iruka said, trying to soothe him. "We're swamped with the wounded." "Yeah, well, thanks to you, we at least managed to snag some beds." TCH. Miyoshi Kazuhiko seemed to think he'd lost face, and he clearly wasn't thrilled, but he shut his mouth. While those two were jawing, Inazukazuma had already crashed out on his bed, fast asleep. Only Komazuka looked antsy, and no wonder, since the bear was the most banged up. If his hand didn't heal right, Umino Iruka might just be stuck not being a ninja, but Komatetsu would have trouble just getting around. Kakugi, on the other hand, wasn't sweating it at all. Knowing what he did from his past life, the chakra scalpel might be advanced medical ninjutsu, but plenty of people in Konoha knew how to use it. Time dragged on, and the medical ninjas qualified for surgery were still unavailable. But finally, two guys were rushed to the front of the line by the assistants to ensure that the medical ninjas could patch them up immediately after the operation. Miyoshi Kazuhiko started fuming again, muttering, "One's from the Hinata clan, and the other's an Aburame. Figures. And here I was, thinking I got us bumped to the front." Umino Iruka had to cut him off. "Kazuhiko, watch it." Kakugi could see plain as day that the two ninjas from Gase were practically on their last legs. Most likely, they were plucked straight from the pile of dead bodies on the battlefield. In that case, even if they were ninja clan members, there wasn't much anyone could say. After living in this world for so long, Kakugi had realized that this wasn't the simple, sanitized version from the original story. This was real life, and real life didn't always make sense. For example, if Kakugi had just been a regular kid from a civilian family, he'd never have had the chance to be mentored by a jonin teacher, not unless he had talent like Kakashi. Plenty of less talented kids from ninja clans were still out there doing missions with their chunin teachers. Take Yushir Kyumate, for instance. In the original story, he eventually got to be a special jounin, so he was considered to have passable talent. But who was his assigned tutor after graduation? A chunin. It wasn't until he shone in the chunin exams and the village saw his potential that he finally got a jonin tutor like Umino Iruka. Look at now. He, Umino Kazuoki, was the hero who took down Hayakura and proved his strength. So why was he still stuck in this crowded ward, waiting for a doctor to see him? If it weren't for Miyoshi Kazuhiko's help, they might not even have beds and would be stuck sleeping on the floor. So, yeah, Kakugi had a few complaints. Suddenly, Kakugi's eyes lit up. Wasn't there a ninja clan member right here next to him? And the heir to the family, no less. Without missing a beat, Kazuoki climbed out of bed and shook Inazukazuma awake. "Ugh, what's up?" "Ow." Inazuka Claw woke up groggy, thinking a medical ninja had finally arrived, but instead he saw Kakuzu's face. "Still no medical ninja." Kazuoki shook his head. Inazuka Claw yawned, rubbed the sleep out of his eyes, and said, "That's weird. Didn't we file the battle report when we beat Itsung? Shouldn't we be considered heroes?" Umino Iruka, who was listening, also felt a bit strange. Logically, they should be getting some special treatment. Kakumu had gotten that kind of treatment once before when he brought Ibiki back last time, but then he saw Miyoshi Kazuhiko's face tighten up. Faced with Umino Iruka's questioning stare, Miyoshi offered a sheepish grin. "Those medical ninjas were so swamped, they didn't even look up when I was talking to them. Guess I forgot to mention who you guys were." "Seriously?" Umino Iruka was speechless, and the four wounded guys all rolled their eyes at Miyoshi Kazuhiko. He was about to say something when the tent flap opened, and a ninja with a pineapple haircut hurried in. He looked around as soon as he walked in. When he spotted Umino Iruka and his group, his eyes lit up, and he rushed over. Seeing Miyoshi Kazuhiko, Pineapple Head instantly got the picture and started complaining. "Miyoshi-kun, didn't you know Lord Jiraiya personally gave the order? Why are you bringing people here?" Miyoshi Kazuhiko smiled and explained, "Well, I got the order to collect the bodies right after the battle." "Whatever, I don't have time to argue." Pineapple Head curled his lip in disgust and introduced himself. I'm Noriaki Nara. Please follow me to another ward. Jiraiya-sama is waiting for you. Everyone struggled out of their beds and followed Nara Noriaki out. Soon, they arrived at the new ward. The tent wasn't big, and the big tent next to the command post wasn't much to look at first glance. Kakugi knew this was their upgrade to the VVIP Special Care Ward. There was a medical ninja and 2 assistants in the tent. 4 hospital beds had been set up, and the sheets looked brand new, but the medical ninja was a total stranger. He'd never seen her around the camp before. She was maybe 26 or 27, with orange hair, big round glasses, and a kind smile. She was a gentle and intelligent beauty. Even Inuzuka Takashi did a double take. Kakugi felt like the woman looked familiar, like he'd seen her somewhere before. The beauty gestured for the 2 assistants to help everyone get into their beds, and Miyoshi Kazuhiko and Nara Noraki left. Before leaving, Nara looked at Umino Ikuku and smiled. Jiraiya-sama is tied up with official business. I'll let him know you're here, and he'll be over in a bit. Umino Ikuku and Inuzuka Takashi nodded and obediently got into their beds. The beauty introduced herself with a smile. I'm the pharmacist Naiyu, and I'll be in charge of your treatment from now on. Kumitote lay in bed, not responding. Inuzuka eyed the pharmacist Nono coldly. Without a word, Umino Ikuku nodded and responded with a smile. Ah, we appreciate it, Chief Pharmacist. Huh, Medicine Master Naiyu chuckled softly. I'm not the head of anything here. I'm just a regular ninja like everyone else. So, should I start with Umino-san? Is that okay? Yakushi Nono's eyes narrowed into slits, and she added with a smile, Jiraiya-sama will be stopping by later, so it's probably best to take care of Umino-san's injuries first. Umino Ikuku agreed right away, lying down and saying with a smile, then I'm in your hands, Dr. Yakushi. The 2 assistants stuck close to the pharmacist Naiyu and immediately jumped in to help. Chapter 72 Medicine Master no Naiyu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. From the start, Yakushi Nono didn't give Kakugi any special attention. Still, hearing the pharmacist's name sent a jolt through Kakugi. Orphanage director, top-notch medical ninja, root member, wandering shrine maiden. This woman wore too many hats. You had to admit, Yakushi Nono seemed like a genuinely good, kind person. Those qualities were rare in the ninja world and probably made her a misfit en route. Judging by Inuzukazuma and his dad's reactions, they knew Yakushi Nono, but while Inuzuka Kuma was on guard, Dad seemed totally unfazed. Maybe Dad knew more about pharmacist Nono, or maybe there was something else going on. As for Kamat, he was completely out of the loop. So, what was pharmacist Nono doing here now? Kakumu thought about it for a second, then it clicked. Dad calling her pharmacist director was actually a test, and Nono saying she was just like everyone else was her response. Before Nara left, he said he'd tell Jiraiya, and Yakushi Nono also mentioned Jiraiya would visit soon. They were sending signals. No wonder Dad acted so cool and played along. Thinking about it, Kakumu felt a lot better. Whatever pharmacist Nono was up to, he could just relax and focus on getting treated. Meanwhile, an assistant unwrapped the bandage from Umino's arm. Pharmacist Nono took a closer look and frowned slightly. She took out a syringe and said seriously, "This is a local anesthetic. I need to make an incision." Umino Ikuku nodded, and the green liquid slowly flowed into his shoulder. After a moment, a faint buzzing sound filled the air as a thin layer of blue chakra coated Yakushi Nono's right hand, a chakra scalpel. With one smooth stroke, the scalpel sliced open Umino Ikuku's arm like butter. The anesthetic worked perfectly. Umino watched his arm being cut open and felt only a slight touch, no pain at all. "Amazing, Dr. Yakushi." Umino Ikuku exclaimed. Pharmacist Nono smiled and used her skills to extract the burning release chakra buried in the wound. Piece by piece, as she worked, beads of sweat started forming on her forehead. Watching this, an idea popped into Katamu's head. Maybe he shouldn't write off pharmacist Nono right away. After all, Root was Root, and Yakushi Nono was Yakushi Nono. Right now, she was just a dedicated Konoha medical ninja. He wondered if she'd met her precious child, Kabuto Yakushi. Yet, while he was lost in thought, the tent flap suddenly swung open. Jiraiya rushed in, followed closely by Kenfang and Kuramu. Seeing Jiraiya arrive, the assistants tried to leave, but Jiraiya waved them back. Nono had already cleared out all the burning release chakra from Umino Ikuku's arm and was now using Palm Sage Jutsu. Kenfong and Kuramaru quietly found a corner to stand in. Jiraiya stood silently beside Nono, not wanting to interrupt her. Nono was focused on her work, seemingly oblivious to everyone else. After a while, Nono wiped the sweat from her brow and said, "The scorching release chakra is gone. You don't need to worry anymore. The surface wound is closed, but the muscles inside still need time to heal. Take it easy for the next few days. You need rest and recovery. With medication and proper care, your arm will be as good as new soon." Nono stood up, her eyes crinkling into a smile, then she nodded to Jiraiya and headed toward Kazuhiko. Just like Umino Ikuku, Kazuhiko lay down and prepared for treatment. Feeling the touch of the chakra scalpel on his abdomen, Kakugi turned his head to look at Umino Ikuku. Jiraiya and Umino Ikuku were chatting, probably about Umino's experience with the mission. But the battle report Jiraiya received was already detailed. Jiraiya was just confirming things in person. Judging by Nono's treatment order, Kakugi was next. Naturally, Inuzukazuma and Kamote also noticed this and waited quietly. Soon, Nono used Palm Sage Jutsu to heal the incision, and Kakugi's treatment was done. Even with the anesthetic, Kakugi could feel a difference in his abdomen. After being hit by the burning release, the injured area had felt like a dead zone. If it weren't for the lingering pain, Kakugi would have thought the muscles had completely died, but now, he could feel his abdomen coming back to life. It still felt dry, but the vitality flowing through his body was slowly healing the damage. Just like Nono said, with the right medicine and care, he'd be back to normal in no time. Looking at Nono, who was working hard to heal him despite being drenched in sweat, Kakugi said sincerely, "Thank you, Dr. Pharmacist." "You're welcome," Nono said softly. Watching Nono walk away, Kakugi turned his attention to Umino Ikuku. Umino Ikuku was still talking to Jiraiya. He seemed fine, no problems so far. Kamote was on the left side of Kazuoki's bed, Umino Ikuku on the right, and Inuzuka Kuma next to Umino Ikuku. After healing Kakugi, Nono didn't go to Kamote's bedside. Instead, she went around Umino and headed for Inuzukazuma. Kakugi saw clearly that as Nono passed by Umino Ikuku and Jiraiya kept talking and weren't on guard against her at all. Kakugi didn't get it. He thought ninjas were always suspicious of root members. In his mind, Inuzukazuma's cold attitude was the normal reaction. Inuzukazuma was lying in bed and snorted when he heard Nono's footsteps, then he buried his face in his pillow. Nono didn't seem to mind and still had a gentle smile on her face. Two assistants unwrapped the bandage, and Nono started the treatment. Kamote stayed in bed with worry etched on his face. He was the most injured, and now it was his turn, but here, Kamote wasn't in a position to complain or question anything. Seeing this, Kakugi sighed quietly. The treatment order was based on who reported to Jiraiya first. Even if that wasn't the case, Kamote would still be last in line. It had nothing to do with him being the most injured. Kamote was just a chunin. The other three, a jonin, a special jonin, and a kid who just awakened sword release, had driven off Yakura. It was a pretty brutal world. Chapter 73 Jiraiya's Inquiry. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Inuzuka Claw's injury wasn't too serious, and Naiyu finished treating him without much fuss. He gave his usual instructions, but Inuzuka Claw just ignored him. Inuzukapo remained silent the whole time. Naiyu wiped the sweat from his brow and headed toward Kyuumate. As he passed Kakuaki's bed, Kakuaki heard Naiyu sigh softly. Something's up between Inuzukazuma and Nono. Katamu thought to himself. Just then, Jiraiya clapped Umino Ikuku on the shoulder, turned, and sauntered over to Kazuoki. "Kid, you did great out there." Jiraiya plopped down on a stool, looking pleased. "Show me that burning release of yours," Jiraiya said simply. "Sure thing." Katamu wasted no time, forming a hand seal while lying down. It's worth mentioning that even bloodline limits require hand seals, though because they're deeply ingrained, those seals can be greatly simplified with practice, like Hashirama Senju's technique of clap your hands and shout whatever you want. Kakugi figured Jiraiya was interested in his burning release. However, he was still surprised that Jiraiya would ask about it so openly and casually, right here in camp with Nono and two assistants present. In Kakugi's mind, Nono was always tied to the root, however, Kazuhiko also realized that thanks to Jiraiya, news of his victory over Yakura had spread across the battlefield. When it came to choosing between protecting him and trying to demoralize the Sand Village, Jiraiya had chosen the latter without hesitation. Kakumu understood and accepted that, after all, burning release was meant to be used. He might have more bloodline limits to develop in the future, so there was no point in keeping it under wraps. A small flame appeared in front of Kakumu, instantly growing into a blazing fireball. Kakumu carefully controlled the fireball, keeping it small and hovering quietly above his chest. The air in the camp immediately felt charged. Jiraiya stared intently at the fireball, his eyes gleaming. All right. Jiraiya stood up, looking at Kakugi with amazement, his satisfaction growing. With Jiraiya's sharp eyes, he could easily tell the difference between the burning release fireball and an ordinary fire release fireball. As for Kakunoki's spontaneous awakening of burning release, Jiraiya figured it might have been a life or death epiphany, or just the result of accumulated effort. After all, Umino Kakugi was definitely not of foreign blood. He was born and raised in Konoha. That much was certain, plus, Kakugi's in-depth study of chakra had laid the groundwork. Here. Give this a shot. Jiraiya pulled out a chakra paper, handing it to Kakugi. It was like he'd been waiting for this. After Kakugi became a ninja, his father had tested his attributes as well. Back then, he had all 5. Umino Iruka didn't realize that many of Kakunoki's attributes were copied. He just assumed Kakunoki was born with all of them, which made him overjoyed. Now, Jiraiya was pulling out the paper again, wanting to confirm it for himself. Holding the paper between his index and middle fingers, Kakugi infused it with chakra. The paper instantly reacted in 5 different ways. It split, burned, crumpled, dampened, all at once, with one corner even tearing. Yep, he's got them all. An awakening burning release on his own meant he had completely mastered the nature transformation and shape transformation of both wind and fire. Completely mastering one's chakra nature transformation, then developing and mastering a second one, was the hard power requirement for Konoha ninja to be promoted to Jounin. In terms of ninjutsu, Kakugi was already at the Jounin level, and being born with all the elements meant higher potential. What's more, Jiraiya had seen firsthand Kakugi's bond with his comrades, which, in his eyes, was especially valuable. Jiraiya fought to contain his excitement, but he couldn't hide the smile on his face. He slowly sat back down, smiled at Kakugi, and said, "Tell me the truth, kid. Besides wind and fire, how good are you at controlling the other chakra natures?" Kakugi thought for a moment and decided to be honest. "I've completely mastered water release chakra too." Whoa! Jiraiya jumped up again, looking at Kakugi with excitement, like he'd struck gold. 10 years old, all 5 elements, mastering the nature and shape transformation of 3 of them, unreal. A true genius. There had been rumors that Umino Kakumu had incredible fighting talent, able to learn his opponent's ninjutsu in battle. And now he had awakened a bloodline limit on his own, filling in the last gap. Talents like this needed to be nurtured. Thinking this, Jiraiya regretted helping Kazuhiko make a name for himself on the battlefield that day, but it wasn't too late. Umino Kakumu was still young and needed protection. Jiraiya didn't say anything else or ask about the specifics of the battle. He had probably already heard enough from Umino Iruka. Jiraiya smiled, gave Kadaki a few encouraging words, and then left. Soon after, Naiyu, the medic, finished treating Kumashu, politely said goodbye to everyone, and left the camp. Before leaving, he exchanged a few words with Kenfong. Kenfong nodded and followed Nono out. The camp suddenly felt empty, leaving only the 4 patients and Kuro Pill behind. Kurama wagged his tail and sauntered over to Inuzuka Claus, grumbling, "Why'd she have to be the one treating you? Don't even get me started." Inuzukazuma was clearly in a foul mood. "She's got that soul light that just messes with people's heads. If it wasn't for her, how could there have been no news about Shaolai for over 2 years? The last news was... Ugh." The dark circles under Inuzuka Claw's eyes were red, indicating that Retsu had probably met with trouble. "Don't say that, Claw," Umino Iruka soothed. "Naiyu left the route last year to focus on taking care of an orphanage. She's not involved with them anymore. Besides, Dying in battle is just part of being a ninja. The root is part of the village, and working for the root is also for the village. It's just that they're extra secretive. But. Inazukazuma got even more worked up, firing back, Kazuhiko understood now that Shao Retsu was Inuzuka Retsu, a member of a branch family of the Inuzuka clan. He had originally been recruited into the root by Nono herself. Besides orphans trained from childhood, recruits into the root were usually active ninjas. Apart from ninja talent, the most important thing for recruits was agreeing with Danzo's ninja philosophy, orphans, being easy to brainwash, and ninjas who already leaned towards Danzo's hawkish thinking were the best picks. They didn't want just anyone. Like in the original story, Metkai signed up on his own and was rejected instantly. Chapter 74. It turns out that this is the root cause of disgust. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Some of the best might even get recruited personally by Danzo or one of his top guys. Look, if you don't agree with his methods, that's your call. This Danzo isn't at the point where he'll go crazy and destroy you if he doesn't get his way. It wasn't until the third Hokage came back into power that Danzo really lost it. Even though Inuzuka Retsu was just a regular chunin at the time, Danzo still valued the Inuzuka family's amazing investigative skills and intel-gathering abilities. And Retsu Inuzuka happened to be someone who believed that ninjas are just tools of war. So after Danzo sent Yakushi Nono, his smile ambassador, Retsu Inuzuka joined Root without much convincing. The problem was, Root's super strict secrecy and mission parameters kept Inuzuka Retsu from contacting his family for over a year. Eventually, all the Inuzuka family got was a box of ashes and a measly pension. The Inuzuka clan head, Inuzuka Claw's dad, stormed the Hokage building demanding answers. But he just went home fuming. Inuzuka Retsu's name was etched on the memorial stone. All Inuzuka Claw knew was that Retsu Inuzuka had died on a mission. The specifics? Top secret. So he joined Root, cut off all contact with his family, and died in some nameless operation. What is that? Inuzuka Claw got worked up and started yelling. Umino Iruka stopped trying to calm her down and just stayed quiet. No one else in the camp said a word. Kazuhiko frowned. Even though he hadn't known Inuzuka Claw for long, he liked her cheerful, carefree attitude, but this time, even though he had reservations about Root, he couldn't agree with her. Retsu Inuzuka dying in obscurity was unacceptable to the Inuzuka family. Then what about all the regular ninjas who died on the battlefield? Tons of newly graduated genin got sent to the front lines as cannon fodder, and they didn't even make it onto the memorial stone. And plenty of ninja orphans were raised specifically to be cannon fodder. When they died, nobody even mourned them. So what? Kazuhiko realized that Inuzuka Claw had a deep-seated sense of entitlement hidden inside. Unlike Hinata, who gets all shy, or the Uchiha, with their noses in the air, Inuzuka Claw probably didn't even realize she thought she was better than everyone else. This feeling that she deserved better treatment and more recognition might be ingrained in the whole ninja clan. Kazuhiko sighed, not wanting to argue. Umino Iruka had probably picked up on it too, which is why he stopped trying to comfort her. He glanced at Shion next to him. Kazuhiko remembered that Shion had a crush on a girl from the Inuzuka family, and wondered if this was making him uncomfortable, but judging from Shion's steady breathing, he was asleep. What a goofball. Here I am worrying about him. Kazuhiko didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but then again, he was the most seriously injured and got the most anesthesia. Even Kazuhiko felt a little drowsy. And that woman, pharmacist Nono, recruited my brother into Root, but then she quit to open an orphanage. Why? She's not even taking care of the orphans in the village. She comes here. I'm starting to wonder if she's back in Root. Inuzuka Claw was furious and pointed the finger at pharmacist Nono. Umino Iruka frowned and started to say something. It seemed to him that Inuzuka Claw was getting a little carried away. The more she talked, the crazier she sounded. Just then, the tent flap flew open. Pharmacist Nono walked in, stone-faced, her lips pressed into a thin line. Kenfong trailed behind her. Not daring to breathe, they'd obviously heard Inuzuka Claw ranting outside. Nono walked right up to Inuzuka Claw. Inuzuka Claw struggled to sit up and glared at her. I'm sorry. Nono suddenly bowed deeply, a full 90 degrees, and apologized loudly. Inuzuka Claw jerked her head up and almost smacked Nono in the face, startling herself. I, Yakushi Nono, didn't do my best by Inuzuka Retsu and I hurt the Inuzuka family's feelings. I am truly sorry. Then Nono straightened up, her face serious, and looked Inuzuka Claw in the eye. I didn't try to trick Inuzuka Retsu into joining Root. Retsu chose to join Root, it was his way of contributing to the village. And Retsu, as a Konoha ninja, did his duty for the village until he died. As someone who was in a similar position, I really admire him. He was a Konoha ninja through and through. With that, Nono turned and walked out of the tent. Even though Nono apologized, she made it clear that Inuzuka Retsu had made his own choices. Inuzuka Claw stared, wide-eyed, unable to come up with a comeback. After thinking for a long time, she finally sputtered out. Then why did you leave Root and come back here now? Nono stopped and turned around slowly. Even though I'm no longer a member of Root, I'll still say that if you can't handle the Root environment, you can leave. If you're really not suited for Root, they'll kick you out before you even have to ask. As for me, I'm here because I need to earn money to support the orphanage. After all, even if I'm not in Root, I'm still a registered ninja in Konoha. This time, Nono ignored Inuzuka Claw and left, but Kazuhiko could tell that Nono wasn't saying everything, like, if you quit Root, there's no guarantee they won't force you to come back if they need you. And a ninja who gets kicked out of Root might have to carry the seal of the tongue's evil Root for the rest of their life. Nono coming back to the battlefield to help the orphanage meant the orphanage was in bad shape financially. It might not be long before Danzo visits the orphanage. Thinking about this, Kazuhiko looked at Nono with sympathy. After Nono left, Kenfong was still standing there, like he was reeling from the intense exchange. Kenfong, you brat. What did that annoying woman Nono say to you? A furious Inuzuka Claw yelled at Kamada. Kenfong was so scared he started trembling. Umino couldn't take it anymore and said gently. Kenfong, what did the pharmacist and the doctor tell you when they took you outside? Kenfong shuffled over to Umino Iruka and said with a sad face. She gave me these medicines and prescriptions, and asked me to use them to help everyone recover. Inuzuka Claw went silent. Regardless of how she felt about Nono, Nono was an amazing healer, and she was doing her part to help the wounded. Like them, Umino Iruka sensed something and said teasingly to Kenfong, if that's the case, we'll be counting on you in the future, Dr. Kenfong. Chapter 75-3 How Kazuhiko's Gift. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Where? Kenfong, blushing, stepped back, clutching the medicine. The fear he'd felt earlier faded away. Kakumu thought for a moment, then realized what his father was probably thinking. These guys were heading back to the village. In the ninja world, medical ninjutsu like healing hands could quickly fix what seemed like serious injuries. But their injuries weren't simple cuts and bruises. They needed time to heal from the inside out. With the tense fighting against Sunagakure, they'd likely be sent back with the supply teams, unable to fight anytime soon. Days passed. Naiyu didn't return. Kenfong handled the dressings and treatments. He even moved his bed into the ward, dedicating himself to being a caregiver. Sunagakure still came looking for a fight every day, but it was more like a drizzle than a storm compared to the first day. Lying in bed, Kakumu could tell the fighting outside was much quieter. On the third night, Jiraiya slipped in alone. He spoke in hushed tones with Umino Iruka. Even though Kakumu was close, he couldn't make out what they were saying. But from their occasional nods, he could tell they'd reached some agreement. Afterward, Jiraiya gave Kakumu some encouraging words and a special piece of advice before leaving: get back to the village safe and sound and wait for the third Hokage's orders. So, they were going back to the village to recover. Even though the fighting wasn't as intense as before, they were still racking up the injured. According to Kenfong, the medical station was overflowing, with people lying outside the tents. Sending the slow-healing wounded to the rear would ease the pressure on the front lines. The next day, just after dark, Nara Akira burst in and announced that Umino's squad and Inuzuka's squad could go home. All the wounded were to gather at the camp's north gate at dawn and return with the supply team that had arrived 2 days earlier. He rushed off to notify others. Kenfong, as part of Umino's squad, was among those heading back. Unfortunately, he was the only one able to move around freely, so he was stuck packing everyone's gear, including Inuzuka Claw's luggage, which he handed to Kuramaru. Kuramaru lay in the corner with the package in his mouth, listlessly wagging his tail. He'd been bored stiff spending every day in the tent with Inuzuka Claw. After that, Kam Fong went to the logistics office and, using Nanoyu's prescription, grabbed enough medicine, bandages, and gauze to last 10 days. It took over 10 days for Umino's squad to transport supplies to the Land of Rivers. A ninja could get from the Land of Rivers to Konoha village in just a few days if they went all out. But transporting supplies and wounded would slow them down considerably. He was getting medicine for 10 days. Thanks to Miyoshi Kazuhiko, a jonin in the logistics department, he even got everything he asked for. Anyone else might have skimped on the supplies. Miyoshi Kazuhiko even offered to help Kam Fong carry everything to the ward. Once inside, he sat on Umino Ikuku's bedside before Kam Fong could even thank him. He chatted with Umino Ikuku, asked about his injuries, greeted the others, and then got up to leave. But before he left, Miyoshi Kazuhiko said sadly, "This might be inappropriate to say, but I'm actually jealous of you. Safe travels, Ikuku." He pulled out a scroll, pressed it into Umino Ikuku's arms, clapped him on the shoulder, and nodded solemnly. After Miyoshi Kazuhiko left, Umino Ikuku tossed the scroll to Kakumu. Since both Umino Ikuku and Kyuubi had lost a hand, Kakumu was the only one who could unseal it. Kakumu caught the scroll and winked at Kam Fong, who got the hint and went to keep watch outside. Poof! Kakumu carefully got out of bed, spread the scroll on the floor, made a hand seal, and pressed it onto the seal character in the center. Instantly, a pile of supplies appeared, 2 high-quality ninja swords, a dozen kunai, almost 100 shuriken, and several smoke bombs and explosive tags. Because of the supply shortages on the front lines, when the list of those returning to the village was made, a rule was issued: ninjas heading back weren't allowed to receive combat supplies. Of course, they could still take what they already had, and the camp wouldn't stop them. Umino Ikuku stared at the 2 ninja swords. When Miyoshi Kazuhiko had visited earlier, he'd complimented their fierce battle against Garura and offhandedly mentioned the damaged swords of Kakumu and Kyuubi, and those kunai, shuriken, smoke bombs, explosive tags. How much had Miyoshi Kazuhiko had to scrounge from others to put this together? These were all things Umino Ikuku, a ninja about to return to the village, wasn't supposed to have. Worried about the dangers they might face on the road, Miyoshi Kazuhiko had risked everything to provide them with these supplies. Umino Ikuku stared at the supplies for a long time, then sighed softly. He told Kakumu to distribute everything and then lay down to rest. Kakumu quickly divided the supplies. He and Kyuubi each took a ninja sword, and the rest was split evenly. He didn't forget to include the medicine, either. In the fight against Yitsung, everyone's ninja tools had been used up. Kakumu only had a beat-up kunai and a few soldier pills left. If they were attacked on their way back, these supplies could really increase their chances of survival. Whatever kind of guy Miyoshi Kazuhiko was, he deserved a proper thank you next time they saw him. The night passed without incident. The next day, at dawn, Umino's squad and Inuzuka's squad arrived at the north gate of the camp. Kakumu held Kuma's hand, while Kam Fong and Umino Ikuku carried the luggage. Kuramaru sighed with his luggage in his mouth and Inuzuka Claw on his back. After a while, the other wounded began to arrive. Only a few had internal injuries like Umino's squad that required long-term care. Most were ninjas with physical disabilities, missing arms, broken legs, blinded. For most of them, retirement was the only option after returning to the village. That was the fate that awaited the vast majority of the wounded. Only a small number would find a suitable job again. Compared to them, Umino's squad was incredibly lucky. No one was truly disabled, and even the most seriously injured, Shyongsho, would fully recover after some time. Chapter 76 The decisive battle begins. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Soon, ninjas from the transport team arrived and began loading the wounded into carts. Umino's class was assigned a cart near the back of the line. Kamada carefully spread out mats, and Kazuki and his father struggled to help Kumatetsu and Inuzuka claw into the cart. Finally, Kazuki helped his father climb in. They crammed their luggage into the remaining space. The cart, about a meter wide but quite long, could fit 4 or 5 people. Kakugi, being the least injured, politely declined the transport team's offer to help push, deciding to alternate with Kamada. When it was Kunfang's turn, Kakumu offered to ride again, but Kenfong refused, not wanting to burden him further. Tsunoki's injury was just slow to heal, so simple actions weren't a problem. Kakumu had served as a transport team member before, carrying supplies on the way there and the wounded on the way back. He also had to stay alert for ambushes, why bother others when you can use your own hands and feet, he thought. In the cart, Inuzuka Claw could only lie down, while Komatetsu tried to turn away from him as much as possible. What's wrong, Bare Hands? Inuzuka Claw asked teasingly. Bare Hands didn't respond, just kept blushing. When we get back to the village, I'll have Lien come visit you in the ward, okay? Bare Hands' face turned even redder, and he stayed silent, his face flushed crimson. Kazuki shook his head. He's 16. He looks like a grown-up ninja. How can he still be so innocent? Soon, everyone in the team was accounted for. Several jonin from the transport team did a head count, and finally, the leader ordered, move out. The team rumbled forward, the leading jonin stayed in the middle, walking slowly with the convoy. Other jonin ran around to maintain order. The team walked in silence, so quiet that you could hear the snap of a twig underfoot. Birds took flight, chirping as they flew away. After a while, they heard the sounds of fierce fighting in the distance. The Daily Sand Village Invitational Battle has begun again. Kakumu thought, sighing. He wondered when the war would ever end. As a time traveler, Kakugi knew this war, later known as the Third Ninja War, would last for about 2 years. 2 years isn't long in the grand scheme of things, but it felt like an eternity when you were living through it. What Kakumu didn't know was that today's battle was especially intense. Golden Sand Waves. Sandstorm Burial. Golden Burial. Raza was a force of nature on the battlefield, unleashing 3 powerful attacks right from the start. The yellow sand swept across everything, burying the Konoha ninja camp behind the lines. Countless Konoha ninjas were caught in the storm, vanishing before they could even scream. Raza was abnormally agitated, his face tight and his eyes bloodshot. A few days ago, unable to find the third Kazekage, Luo Sha had sent a secret message to the village. Last night, a reply arrived. Elder Chiyo warned Raza that if the third Kazekage wasn't found by the time he received the letter, he would withdraw his troops immediately. Just then, Maeda Ryomo, a subordinate searching for the third Kazekage, reported that he had found traces of him. Ignoring his need for rest, Luo Sha hurried to a location 20 miles away. Overnight, he found several stiff corpses, preserved by the dry wind and sand. They hadn't decayed much in just a few days, and their identities could be vaguely determined. These corpses were all members of the third Kazekage's shadow guard. The cause of death was identified as a highly toxic poison of unknown composition. The only ones missing were the third Kazekage and Sunegakure's genius puppet master. Scorpion, Zeon, a student of Chiyo, was a master of poison. Luo Sha immediately had a terrible thought, one that made it hard to breathe. After ordering his subordinates to keep it a secret, Luo Sha left in a hurry. Back at camp, he went straight to Yitsong's ward. Yitsong was the only one in Sunegakure whom Luo Sha considered a true high-level person, and Luo Sha didn't know who else to turn to. After a long discussion that lasted all night, Luo Sha and Yitsong reached a consensus: fight hard, win the battle, and then retreat. The war had been going on for days. Who knew how long the news of the third Kazekage's disappearance could be kept from Konoha? Just as Sunegakure had spies in Konoha, nobody would believe that Konoha didn't have spies in Sunegakure. Konoha must have already started speculating about the third Kazekage's absence. Furthermore, the third Kazekage's disappearance was starting to affect the morale of Sunegakure. If they evacuated directly, Konoha's pursuit could easily turn into a rout. It was better to use their numerical advantage to launch a decisive battle, defeat Konoha, and then retreat in an orderly fashion. As for boosting morale, Luo Sha already had a plan. After their secret discussion, Luo Sha and Yitsong fully opened up to each other and became true comrades. The position of fourth Kazekage was practically Luo Sha's, but Luo Sha wasn't focused on that. He was just happy to have Yitsong on his side. He was also sad and angry about the disappearance of his master, the third Kazekage. After leaving Yitsong's ward, Luo Sha stayed up all night, tormented by his complex emotions. Early the next morning, Luo Sha ordered a feast for the entire army and announced the order for a decisive battle. He then delivered the most morale-boosting line he could think of. Avenge the third Kazekage. Luo Sha assumed the third Kazekage was dead, and likely kidnapped by Scorpion, but he couldn't say that without confirmation. Therefore, he naturally blamed Konoha. Fueled by passionate slogans and Raza's relentless attacks, the Sunagakure ninjas launched a desperate assault, throwing their lives away. The Sand ninjas were like waves crashing against the Konoha ninja army. Konoha was like a boat in a storm. Oh no, are the Sand ninjas crazy? Jiraiya cursed as he performed a summoning jutsu, calling forth Toad Ki holding a harpoon shield. Aegean, protect me, Jiraiya ordered as he bit his wrist, smeared blood on his face, weaved a few hand seals, and put his hands together, saying to the toad. I want to summon 2 sages. During this process, I can't let go of my hands. Don't worry, I'll complete the mission. Even though I'm clumsy. Toad Takru raised his shield to protect Jiraiya. Yeah. Thanks, Jiraiya said, resting firmly on Toad Takru's head, and a light appeared between his hands. Hand over Lord Kazekage. Avenge Lord Kazekage. Charge, kill. Chapter 77 Immortal Mode, Activate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the distance, the Sand Ninja's revenge chants echoed, reaching Jiraiya. Now he understood why they were acting so crazy. Truth be told, the third Kazekage's long absence had sparked speculation among Konoha ninjas, not just Jiraiya. Given the chance, every Konoha ninja, including Jiraiya, would have taken out the third Kazekage, but Konoha hadn't done anything. What kind of twisted genius spread such rumors? Jiraiya was so mad he almost lost the Senjutsu chakra he'd just gathered. He'd initially thought Sage Mode was overkill, but now it seemed like exactly what he needed. Without it, he wouldn't be able to withstand the Sand Ninjas' insane attack. They outnumbered Konoha's forces by nearly 2 to 1. Jiraiya could protect himself, but the ordinary ninjas would suffer heavy losses, and he was the frontline commander of Konoha's ninja army in the Land of Rivers. He had to enter Sage Mode ASAP to withstand the Suna ninjas' attack. Otherwise, this battle would be a disaster. Sage Mode wasn't exactly his forte, maybe he just wasn't talented enough, but Jiraiya had never been able to seamlessly blend movement and stillness in Sage Mode. To use it in combat, he first had to refine enough Senjutsu chakra to enter the mode and summon 2 Toad Sages. Refining enough Senjutsu chakra took a full 5 minutes. 5 minutes wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. He couldn't move during that time. To protect him, Toad Ki could only defend passively, occasionally jumping in to help besieged Konoha ninjas. Under the Suna ninjas' relentless assault, the Konoha ninjas fought like their lives depended on it. Flying ninjutsu, broken ninja tools, battle cries, blood, and severed limbs painted a cruel and bloody picture of the battlefield. Jiraiya clasped his hands, focusing on refining the Senjutsu chakra, but his eyes stayed glued to the carnage. Pine. Pine. With 2 successful summons, Immortal Mode was finally complete. A small toad appeared on each of his shoulders. Fukasaku and Shima, the 2 Toad Sages. Jiraiya's face had also undergone a drastic change, with deep red eyeshadow around his eyes and his nose covered in warts. Little Jiraiya, when are you going to learn to use Sage Mode on your own? I'm cooking for the kids, Shima immediately complained. Come on, don't say that, Fukasaku tried to calm his wife, but he froze, stunned by the brutal battlefield. Even after 8 centuries, he hadn't seen such a gruesome, blood-soaked fight in a long time, and Konoha was clearly getting hammered. Shima fell silent. As you can see, the boss is Fukasaku, and the boss is Shima. Jiraiya kept his eyes forward, his voice low. We'll catch up later. Right now, the hero Jiraiya is about to kick some ass. A huge wave of sand rushed toward him. Fukasaku and Shima were responsible for maintaining the balance of movement and stillness in Jiraiya's Sage Mode, and they were already linked with him. Jiraiya formed a seal at lightning speed, and Fukasaku and Shima immediately cooperated. Fukasaku blew out wind blasts, Shima breathed out flames, and Jiraiya spewed orange oil. Sage Art, Gomen. Massive, superhot flames surged toward the sand waves, instantly engulfing and incinerating them. The unstoppable flames continued toward the sand ninjas, consuming vegetation and rocks in their path. Most sand ninjas retreated, but Raza advanced, catching up. Sunigakure lacked water-style ninjas, and even a little water wouldn't be enough to put out such a huge senjutsu flame. Raza had to handle it himself. Magnet release, quicksand burial, that the gold dust quickly covered the flames, with a large amount of it holding back the scorching heat, burying the flames deep underground. Even Raza, the future fourth Kazekage, needed 2 large-scale ninjutsu to counter Jiraiya's sage art, Gomen, not to mention the other sand ninjas. Immortal mode was terrifying. For the first time, Raza truly felt its immense power. With the retreat of the Suna ninjas and the shift of Luosha's attack targets, there was inevitably a gap in the Suna ninjas' attack. Opportunity. Jiraiya couldn't let this chance slip and shouted. Toad Ki. Roger that, even though I'm clumsy, I'll do my best. Toad Ki replied slowly. Despite the slow voice, he moved quickly. He strode forward, swinging his harpoon and shield, breaking through the enemy lines and clearing a path. Jiraiya leaped off Toad Ki, completed a seal in mid-air, and slammed his hand on the ground. Summoning technique. With the celestial chakra boost, Jiraiya's psychic abilities were finally unleashed. With 2 ping. Ping. Sounds, 2 toads from Mount Myaboku were summoned. Gamabunta, with his pipe and katana. Tagahiro, with 2 swords strapped to his back. Including Toad Ki, the 3 male gods of Mount Myaboku and the Toad brothers had all appeared. Brothers of Mount Myaboku, with me. Standing atop Toad Ki, Jiraiya was riding high. The Konoha ninjas, who had been suppressed for so long, had their morale boosted. The 3 Toad brothers charged straight into the enemy formation, swinging their huge ninja swords and instantly reaping the lives of countless sand ninjas. Golden sand waves. Raza had no choice but to use his special abilities again. Magnet release was still quite effective against large psychic beasts. The wide-range attack style was perfect for targeting them. In the first battle between Sunigakure and Konoha, Raza successfully limited Gamabunta's attack, but this time, there were 3 large psychic beasts in front of him. The giant hands made of gold dust tried to grab the 3 toads, but the jumping toads couldn't be caught so easily. With great difficulty, he managed to restrain Tamahiro, and just as he was about to breathe a sigh of relief, he looked up and saw Jiraiya unleashing a magic attack. Sage Art, Needle Jizo. Countless hairs sprouted from Jiraiya's head, each one as hard as a Senbon needle. The speed was incredible, the range was huge, and the number seemed endless. Not only was it targeting Raza, but it was also targeting a large number of ordinary sand ninjas around him. Raza had no choice but to use his gold dust to resist Jiraiya's large-scale attack. When he was slightly distracted, Tamahiro, who had just been restrained, jumped free. Tamahiro dove headfirst into the Suna ninja formation, instantly crushing them and swinging his 2 swords, taking out any Suna ninjas within his reach. Chapter 78 Immortal Magic. Dayama Rasengan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Damn it, Luosha seethed, watching their advantage slip away. There was just no way he could handle 3 giant psychic beasts on his own. Right then, Luosha desperately missed his master, the 3rd Kazekage, or even if Monkfunfu could bring Shikaku to help, that'd be great. He watched Jiraiya, energized, and the 3 massive summons tear through the battlefield. Luosha couldn't help but look up and sigh. God really favors Konoha. Jiraiya, powered up by Sage Mode, was truly terrifying. Now, it wasn't even about putting up a good fight, but how to end this war with some dignity. That's what Luosha needed to figure out. With no real way to contain them, the 3 Toad brothers were cutting a swath through his troops. The Sand Ninja had completely lost their offensive momentum and were scrambling to defend themselves. Every Suna ninja there realized it, and they started pulling their formations tighter. Sunigakure's elite Jonin stepped up, trying to rally the Sand Ninja for a counterattack. Some elite Jonin unleashed massive ninjutsu, while groups of regular ninja combined their jutsu to try and stop the giant toads. It gave the toads some trouble and managed to stabilize things a little. Wind style, great breakthrough. Dozens of sand ninja clustered together and blasted Gamabunta with a wind release. Great breakthrough. 1 person's a tree, 100 people's a forest, and dozens of whirlwinds combined into a massive tornado, barreling towards Gamabunta. Even someone as huge as Bunta couldn't ignore that kind of attack. He slammed his giant, tree trunk-sized katana into the ground and wove hand signs with both hands. Water style, water bullet jutsu, that a massive ball of water slammed into the giant tornado, the two ultimately canceling each other out. The jutsu dissipated, leaving behind what felt like a heavy rain. It's working. The sand ninja, having found a tactic that worked, were pumped. As a result, they started forming small groups, and the Konoha ninja on the battlefield adjusted their tactics too, forming larger teams to fight the Suna ninja. Slowly, relying on their numbers, the Suna ninja started turning the tide, and the battlefield reached a stalemate. Luo Sha wasn't thrilled about it. He knew this was the best they could hope for. Sunagakure was seriously lacking in high-end firepower on this battlefield. Raza alone couldn't match Jiraiya in Sage mode, plus 3 giant summons, maintaining the status quo, lasting until the battle was over, and getting the Sand Ninja back in one piece would be a win. He was even thinking of an excuse for their retreat. He'd live to fight another day, then gather all of Sunagakure's power to avenge the third Kazekage, but Jiraiya wasn't having that. Sunagakure had been spoiling for a fight for days, and Konoha hadn't been able to capitalize, only taking casualties. This was a rare chance for a decisive battle, and Konoha had the upper hand, so why not take this opportunity to kick Sunagakure's ass? Besides, with the battlefield starting to even out, Shima already wanted to go home and take care of her grandson. I already missed my grandson's breakfast. I can't let the children go hungry for lunch. Those were Shima's exact words. Despite Fukasaku's comforting words, Jiraiya still had a headache. Gotta wrap this up quick. Sage Art, Gomen. Flames hotter than hell rained down on the Sand Ninja again. Just as Luo Sha was catching his breath, Jiraiya was hitting them with another Sage Jutsu. Magnetic style, golden sand waves. Faced with Jiraiya's aerial attack, Luo Sha had no choice but to face it head-on. The massive waves of sand blocked the flames, but the golden sand was quickly scorched and devoured. The flames of Sage Arts were no ordinary fire style. Fortunately, the sand waves did manage to burn up much of the flame's power. Luo Sha summoned another massive amount of placer gold to meet it. This time, he finally cancelled out the Sage Art, Gomen. A bead of cold sweat trickled down Luo Sha's forehead. This fight was a nightmare. Just in terms of ninjutsu consumption, Raza was trading 2 for 1, burning through chakra way faster than Jiraiya, not to mention that Jiraiya was in Sage mode, and the 2 sages from Mtimayaboku were constantly helping him refine Senjutsu chakra. In a war of attrition, Raza couldn't compete with Jiraiya. And he didn't seem to have any quick way to deal with Jiraiya. At this rate, Luo Sha wouldn't be able to drag things out. Luo Sha racked his brain, trying to figure out how to turn things around. Just then, as the ninjutsu dissipated, the sand gold that had been shielding Luo Sha slowly dispersed. Luo Sha looked up, took another look around, and suddenly realized, where the heck was Jiraiya? Jiraiya, who was supposed to be standing right in front of him, had vanished. Oh crap! Luo Sha whipped around, simultaneously weaving hand signs to manipulate the placer gold around him. As soon as he turned, he spotted Jiraiya in midair, a blue ball of energy hovering in his hand. Heh. Jiraiya saw Raza had noticed him and grinned. In midair, he rapidly closed the distance, the ball in his hand getting closer and closer. That's high-density chakra concentrated in the palm of his hand. Luo Sha saw the destructive potential of that move instantly and was horrified, and it was completely silent when activated, making it impossible to detect. It was too late to dodge, even with the teleportation technique. Luckily, he'd started weaving hand signs when he sensed something was wrong. At this point, Luo Sha had no choice but to brace for impact. Sand shield. The placer gold around Luo Sha surged towards him, instantly coalescing into a massive shield. Luo Sha was summoning every bit of placer gold he could, constantly reinforcing the shield and making it thicker. Just watching Jiraiya's azure ball getting closer and closer, Raza felt, for the first time, completely helpless in the middle of a battle. Sage Art, Rasengan. Small but packing incredible power, the Rasengan slammed into Luo Sha's unfinished sand shield. The instant they made contact, a layer of the sand shield was blasted away. Luo Sha gritted his teeth, frantically weaving hand signs. With him as the center, all the placer gold nearby swirled inwards, desperately trying to reinforce the rapidly thinning sand shield. You're a lucky guy, Luo Sha. I just learned this from my prized pupil not long ago. Rasengan. You're the first person to see what it looks like. Large beads of sweat dripped from Luo Sha's forehead. He was focusing on channeling every last bit of chakra and didn't have time to listen to Jiraiya's trash talk. Seeing that Raza had no intention of responding, Jiraiya lost interest. He looked at Luo Sha with regret and said in a deep voice, "Farewell, Luo Sha." Jiraiya instantly poured a massive amount of Senjutsu chakra into the Rasengan. While maintaining its original density, the Rasengan visibly expanded in size. The destructive power grew exponentially, as evidenced by the sand shield rapidly disintegrating. Sage Art, Ultra Big Ball Rasengan. Chapter 79. If I don't come, Garura will cry. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Rasengan in Jiraiya's hand instantly morphed into a massive, jade-colored sphere. Without hesitation, he slammed it toward Raza. Poof! The sand shield shattered like paper. Is this it? Raza stared blankly at the approaching giant Rasengan. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. He thought he'd be thinking of Kaltero and their unborn child. But his mind was a blank. Raza desperately tried to focus. Finally, he pictured the sand ninjas fighting for their lives. Without me. He wondered, how many of these Suna ninjas will make it home? At least there's Yitsang. Even injured, if she's willing to take charge, more of them have a chance. If I die, Yitsang will probably be the next Kazakage. Why am I thinking of Yitsang at a time like this? Scorching release, fire blast. A massive fireball, several yards across, accompanied by a deafening roar, slammed into Jiraiya from the side. Even before it hit, Jiraiya felt the searing heat radiating from the flames. The temperature was comparable to Gomon's technique. Instinctively, Jiraiya released the giant Rasengan, used the Flying Thunder God technique, and teleported away. With Jiraiya gone, the giant Rasengan faltered. Deprived of chakra, it quickly dissipated. As the Rasengan vanished, the fireball abruptly stopped and hovered in the air. A petite female ninja, wrapped in gauze and bandages, with a headscarf, walked slowly into view. It was Yitsang. Raza looked at the fireball above her, then at Yitsang, his expression a mixture of confusion and gratitude. He'd been saved by Yitsang. Despite their differences, they'd become close comrades through a few simple conversations, but deep down, Raza still wanted to prove he was stronger. Watching Yitsang approach, Raza said, "I didn't expect you to show up." His voice was calm, betraying no hint of panic. Yitsang rolled her eyes. "If I didn't come, Garura would have a meltdown." "Ha," Raza chuckled. "Have at it." "All right." Yitsang waved a hand, and the hovering fireball shot toward one side of the battlefield, toward where Jiraiya had teleported. Damn it, she's persistent. No sooner had Jiraiya arrived than he saw the fireball bearing down on him. He quickly formed hand seals. Sage Art, Fire Release, Great Flame Bullet. Jiraiya's flame bullet roared towards the fireball, attempting to intercept it. Heh, Yitsang chuckled, formed a seal, flicked her wrist, and the fireball instantly veered, dodging the great flame bullet and racing towards the Konoha ninjas. The great flame bullet, missing its target, slammed into a corner of the battlefield. Konoha and sand ninjas who couldn't escape were engulfed in flames. Crap! Jiraiya yelled, watching helplessly as the fireball changed course. He knew he couldn't catch it in time. Bunta! Use Iron Cannonball. Got it. Gamabunta formed seals as soon as he saw the fireball approaching. Water Release, Iron Cannonball. The Iron Cannonball Gamabunta spat out was incredibly fast, almost as fast as a tailed beast ball. This time, Yitsang's fireball couldn't evade, and collided with the Iron Cannonball. I still don't get how that kid Kakugi beat Yitsang. Yakura controlled the massive fireball with pinpoint precision, which really surprised Jiraiya. What Jiraiya didn't know was that Yitsang had always possessed the burning release and vapor style, but her mastery of the pyroblast fireball technique had been lacking. Since her battle with Kakugi, Yitsang had dedicated herself to mastering it. Even in the hospital, she'd meticulously studied the burning release, pushing her control to a whole new level. If Kakugi copied burning release again, the level would be displayed as Grandmaster Burning Release. As the pyroblast and iron cannonball collided and dissipated, a thick cloud of vapor blanketed the battlefield. Under cover of the vapor, Raza launched his attack. Before the Konoha ninjas knew it, the placer gold, like waves, had submerged their ankles. Sand-binding coffin, a cruel smile spread across Raza's face. The placer gold rapidly climbed up the bodies of the Konoha ninjas. A few elites managed to escape, but most struggled in vain. Some Konoha ninjas desperately shouted the names of their comrades, hoping for rescue. Too late. Listening to their cries, Raza smiled coldly. Sand burial. In an instant, dozens of Konoha ninjas were crushed to death. Hearing the enemy's screams, Raza felt a surge of satisfaction. This should have happened sooner. On the battlefield, a Kage-level powerhouse with free reign was a terrifying force. You monster! Jiraiya's eyes blazed with rage. He formed hand seals at lightning speed. Sage Art, Gomen. Scorching Release, Fire Blast. Yi-Tsang once again blocked Jiraiya's Sage Art meant for Raza. Raza smiled and continued focusing on the ordinary Konoha ninja. The giant toads from Mount Myaboku were already showing signs of fatigue as the sand ninjas regrouped and fought together, so he wasn't too worried about them at the moment. With Hagura keeping Jiraiya busy, Raza was finally free to unleash his power. Just as he was about to launch another attack, Yi-Tsang, having exchanged more blows with Jiraiya, approached Raza. Though she tried to hide it, Raza noticed something was wrong. Yi-Tsang started to speak, but her body trembled slightly. The gauze wrapped around the wound on her waist was stained dark red. What? Raza was shocked. He knew Yi-Tsang was injured, but he hadn't realized how serious it was. He found a large tree, instructed nearby ninjas to stand guard, and quickly helped Yi-Tsang sit down against it. It's fine, Yi-Tsang said, beads of sweat pouring down her face. She reluctantly used medical ninjutsu to temporarily stop the bleeding. We just need to retreat as soon as possible. Raza considered her words for a moment. Before he could reply, a voice spoke. What's wrong, brother Raza? The speaker was about 20 years old, with orange hair and a headscarf. It was Raza's brother-in-law, Yashimaru. As a medical ninja, Yashimaru had been monitoring the battlefield. When he saw Raza and Yi-Tsang acting strangely, he rushed over. Yashimaru, you're just in time. Raza stepped aside, revealing Yi-Tsang's reopened wound. Seeing the extent of the injury, Yashimaru hurried forward to treat her. Chapter 80 Withdrawal, Part. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the initial panic, Luo Sha had calmed down and was seriously considering Yi-Tsang's offer. The Suna ninja now had the advantage, a shift undeniably triggered by Yi-Tsang's arrival. Because Yi-Tsang held back Jiraiya, Luo Sha was able to wipe out the remaining enemy forces. Before Yi-Tsang showed up, the Suna ninja were in serious trouble. After weighing everything, Luo Sha called in reinforcements. Soon, Kurosa, Miyachi Akameru, Karada II, Tianshan Tifeng, and Mayada Liamo arrived. These 5 weren't just elite jonin, they were also Raza's trusted advisors. They were the ones he'd tasked with finding the missing Kazekage. Raza's ability to command the 8,000 sand ninja on the battlefield hinged on the teamwork of these 5, summoning them all at once was risky, given the ever-changing battlefield, so Luo Sha got straight to the point. Yi-Tsang's old injury has flared up. Things look bad. We need to organize an orderly retreat, now. These 5 were the village's best, and they instantly grasped the situation. Without Yakura to contain them, Konoha would push the sand ninja back to where they started. It was time to cut their losses. The 5 immediately acknowledged the order and teleported away. Meanwhile, Jiraiya had noticed something was off. After their brief confrontation, Yi-Tsang vanished. A thorough search revealed Yi-Tsang under a tree at the battlefield's edge, guarded by Suna ninja, with Luo Sha nearby. Coupled with Yi-Tsang's subtle cues during their fight, it clicked for Jiraiya. Yi-Tsang's injury hadn't healed at all. This was the best news of the day. Elated by this discovery, Jiraiya thought, today, I'm gonna tear a chunk out of Sunagakure. Without hesitation, Jiraiya turned to the 3 Toad brothers. Charging headfirst into battle was their specialty. Sorry. Toad Ki mumbled apologetically. I'm just clumsy. Poof! Toad Key vanished in a puff of smoke before Jiraiya's eyes, huh? Jiraiya was stunned. Jiraiya, a run, Gawain yelled, poof, star, right after Toad Key, when Tai disappeared. Of the three Toad brothers, only Toad Guang remained. Jiraiya glanced at Togahiro, still swinging his swords wildly, but clearly exhausted. Sigh. Jiraiya rubbed his temples, frustrated, watching this opportunity slip away. Jiraiya hated it, but he was out of options. This had been the fiercest battle since the war with Sunagakure began. It had dragged on from morning till afternoon, draining even the psychic beasts of their chakra. Brother Fukasaku, Sister Shima, thanks for your help. Go get some rest. Jiraiya said heavily. Shima, who always complained about Jiraiya, remained silent. Fukasaku asked worriedly. You okay, little Jiraiya? I'm fine. Jiraiya's voice was weary. Now that we've fought, it's time to pull back. Alright then, Fukasaku nodded to Shima. Okay, see ya. Give my regards to the great Toad Sage. Jiraiya managed a smile, poof. Poof, Fukasaku and Shima made hand seals and returned to the psychic world. Remember to visit Mount Mayaboku for dinner sometime. Before leaving, Shima called out. Jiraiya chuckled. Even though the two immortals were gone, he couldn't help but reply. I don't want to eat at Mayaboku. Jiraiya's mouth watered at the thought of the fat caterpillars and insect pupae, poof, star, Togahiro, in the distance, finally reached his limit. Barely dodging a ninjutsu attack, he returned to the psychic world. Then, Jiraiya reverted to his normal appearance, leaving Sage Mode. We have to retreat. Jiraiya murmured, without the power of Sage Mode and the Mount Mayaboku toads, Konoha's numerical disadvantage would be too much to overcome. Jiraiya could stall Raza, but the Konoha ninja, despite being outnumbered, couldn't withstand the Suna's onslaught. Taking advantage of Yitsang's injury, Sunagakure was preparing to pull back. And now, so was Konoha, Jiraiya thought as he called over the Inoshikacho trio to arrange the retreat. Both Sunagakure and Konoha received retreat orders from their commanders. The ninja, locked in a deadly struggle moments ago, stopped fighting and backed away. They looked at each other warily, slowly retreating from the battlefield in an orderly manner. Finally, every member of the Konoha army made it back to camp safely. As the damaged village gates closed, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Jiraiya pushed aside his exhaustion and ordered some ninja to repair the damaged walls at dawn. While working, Jiraiya noticed a team of Suna ninja collecting bodies from the battlefield. Cleaning up the battlefield at night was a tacit understanding, wasn't it? Why was Sunagakure in such a rush? Jiraiya sensed something fishy and immediately summoned Narashikaku. Narashikaku, busy assessing the damage, reluctantly left Yamanaka Kaichi in charge and hurried over. After a careful observation, Narashikaku said. This is definitely strange. Looks like Sunagakure is withdrawing its forces. Jiraiya, a seasoned Kage-level warrior, immediately understood. Shikaku wasn't talking about a tactical retreat. He meant a full withdrawal. After a brief search, Jiraiya spoke. You're right. Sunagakure is really pulling out. The third Kazekage had been missing since the war began, leading to a lot of speculation, especially after hearing the Suna ninja shouting for revenge for Lord Kazekage during their attack. It could be inferred that the leadership of Sunagakure was almost certain that the third Kazekage wasn't coming back, and losing the third Kazekage threw Sunagakure into disarray. What was the point of attacking Konoha? To prevent a collapse in morale and defeat, they pinned the blame on Konoha to boost their spirits for one last attack. Jiraiya was sure that the people pulling the strings behind the scenes in Sunagakure didn't want this situation. But they were going all in, trying to take out the Konoha ninja army in one fell swoop. That person had to be Luo Sha. What a sinister plan. Jiraiya was extremely grateful he hadn't let his guard down. Instead, he'd activated Sage Mode in time. Otherwise, the Konoha army wouldn't have lasted until Yitsang entered the battlefield.